When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject, Last Light. User, Anon12. Posted, February 4th, 1997.
This would have happened back in the early 80s when I was still young enough to let my days slip away without feeling guilty about it. I couldn't have been more than 10 years old and flush with the post-Christmas high. Most kids I knew went into a funk after the new year. They felt that once all the unwrapping was done, so too was the fun, whereas January felt to me like a month-long secret held by the earth, a promise of things to come. There was, however, one notable exception. I was always frightened to be outside of the house between the hours of 4 and 6 p.m., just as the sun was setting. It didn't matter if I was inside, away from the windows and clock. Once the sun started creeping toward the horizon, I knew. Pressure would build inside me, knotting up my stomach. I didn't even like looking outside as shadows grew long and the Pacific Northwestern sunlight turned rose gold. I was afraid of what I might see. My family lived on Bainbridge Island, 2 blocks down from Safeway on High School Road. Bainbridge High was a few streets past that, and my elementary school, Ordway, was pretty much next door. Every day, I'd be out the side doors as soon as the bell rang at 3, so I could get home before the lights started to fade. The walk really should only have taken about 20 minutes, but you had to account for the only danger more real than my fear of being outside after 4. High schoolers. A few would hang around after classes ended, smoking and talking about whatever it was older kids talked about back then. Mostly they didn't care about us little kids, except for the ones who did, who got a gleam in their eye when they saw you. Boy or girl, it didn't matter. If they had that look, it meant they liked to hurt, and you had to run. The whole island is still heavily forested now and was even more dense at the time. As soon as we were allowed to leave, I'd run out the side door that faced the church, then duck across the street into a small wood that stretched all the way down to the Safeway near my house. If you got far enough in, you couldn't be seen from the high school, and while it might take you an extra 20 minutes to pick your way through undergrowth, at least you were safe. One day, after school, I was in the wood, focusing on my feet so as not to trip on a root, when I heard a teenage voice call out, "Hey, kid." My blood turned to ice. I looked up, my eyes darting around to see where it had come from. Maybe, just maybe, I'd get lucky enough and find out they were talking to someone else. "What are you doing playing in the woods, little boy? You could get lost." It was closer now, definitely a girl's voice. That was bad. Girl bullies were harder to predict. Sometimes they would just say things that sounded mean or ask questions I didn't understand, laughing at my answers, but they could also pinch or scratch or hit in ways that hurt even more than what the boys would do. All I could do was run and hope I didn't fall. I bolted. "You little fuck, get back here." The girl's footsteps were faster than mine. I pumped my legs harder, breath hot in my lungs as bare branches slapped at my jacket. A second voice broke in, coming from ahead of me. "I see him." Footsteps were coming from both directions now, hemming me in. There were two choices: run to the right out to the road where there could be another one waiting, or go left, further into the forest. It wasn't really a question at all. I went left and heard them do the same. I'd never been so far into the forest. Behind me, the girls had slowed down. I heard one of them say something about smoking, allowing me to put distance between us. Even without leaves, the canopy was so thick that light barely reached the ground. What little made it through was turning rose gold. A fear even greater than that, caused by the high schoolers, rose, and I stopped watching the tangle of roots passing beneath me. A dozen steps later, and my foot got caught, sending my body flying in one direction, my backpack in another. I slammed into a thick cedar tree, breath exploding from my body. Gasping and wheezing, I tried to suck in lungfuls of air with marginal success. Meanwhile, familiar dread bloomed as above the slivers of visible sky darkened. I couldn't be here. I needed to be at home. Aw, did the little boy fall down? They'd found me. A blonde and a brunette, both in their late teens, stepped close, breathing hard. The blonde looked bored, but the brunette, her denim jacket freshly stained with mud, was furious. "I can't believe you made us run, you total asshole, and we were gonna be nice." She coughed wetly as she caught her breath, gathering phlegm in her mouth. I closed my eyes a split second before a wad of it splattered across my face. It was hot and disgusting, and I went to wipe it off with my sleeve when she stopped me. "Oh no, you fucking don't. You sit there and you like it." I was too frightened to cry. All I wanted to do was go home before the sun set anymore, and I told them as much. My eyes were still covered in spit and clamped shut, so I didn't know the brunette was close until her hot breath was in my ear. "Is the little baby scared of the dark? Too fucking bad. You can go home when I say you can go home." She started twisting the same ear hard enough to make me cry out. This kept up for several minutes, alternating sides at random, her cackling the whole time. "I want you to cry for me. If you cry, maybe I'll let you go without hurting you anymore." Couldn't do it. No matter how hard I tried, tears couldn't get past the cast iron ball of fear in my chest. It was getting darker. From somewhere to my right, I heard the blonde say, "Colleen, come on, we should go. It's creepy out here." The brunette stopped torturing me long enough to reply, "Grow a pair, Brenda. What are you afraid of? The big bad wolf? Give me a fucking..." An explosion of sound came from my left, branches snapping as someone or something broke out of the underbrush. I could hear a thick, snuffling sound, followed by the brunette, Colleen, screaming so loudly I thought my eardrums would burst. She kept screaming right up until there was a wet crunching sound. After that, the only sound was footsteps running away. Brenda, I guessed, and the rhythmic snuffling of whatever had silenced her friend. My eyelids were clamped down so hard they felt welded shut. It was finally here, the nightmare waiting for me in the sunset. Hard steps padded in a circle, so close I should have felt its warmth. There was none at all. For a moment, there was silence, just long enough I wondered if it was gone. Then a cold, slimy mass slid across my face, tracing the lines left behind by Colleen's spit. Internally, I recoiled at the alien touch, my revulsion so strong the world behind my eyes began to swim. God. Before I could find out where the crude sandpaper voice had come from, darkness swallowed me up until a search party found me hours later, alone and half frozen. Maybe that's for the best.
Subject, toys. User, NTAR2. Posted, February 25th, 1998.
Working retail anywhere is no walk in the park. But Christmas? Selling toys? That's a special kind of hell. One I've been living for the last 10 years as I go through what I like to call a long-term transitional period in my life. After the holidays are over, things quiet down. Temporary hires are sent packing, and while there's a spike in returns for the first 2 weeks of January, you generally see fewer customers. This is when our resident ghost most often makes himself known. Since you can never predict management's moods, I won't name the store, though our haunting has actually been in the news recently, so I don't think I'm breaking any policies by talking about it here. Back when I started here, my divorce had recently been finalized, and ghosts were the last thing on my mind. When the other staff members would talk about it, I'd nod my head, taking it just seriously enough not to offend anyone. That first Christmas kicked my ass so hard I almost welcomed the ice storm that shut us down 3 weeks later. Our assistant store director, Jeff, gathered us on the floor and said corporate had passed word that the storm, already howling outside, was going to get worse. So bad, in fact, they were closing the store early, something they almost never did. As long as one of us stayed behind to help Jeff lock up, everyone else could go. It made sense to me that the only guy who didn't have someone waiting for him at home should volunteer, so I raised my hand. Once everyone had gone on their merry way, Jeff and I split up, each taking a side of the store. With the lights off and no customers, I had a brief moment of unreality where I realized I was living some little kid's dream. The thought had barely left my mind when one hell of a crash came from Books R Us, sounding like someone had dumped over a whole rack. I raced over there and found nothing out of order whatsoever. Coloring books and kids' novels were neatly lined up along shelves next to a poster kiosk, its bins full of undisturbed cardboard tubes. 3 times I walked that aisle, finding no explanation for what I'd heard. The longer I stood there, the more fierce the wind became. If I kept dicking around, I told myself, I'd be driving home at 5 miles an hour if I got there at all. Double-checking the fire door at the far end of Books was my final task, and once that was done, I started back toward the front of the store, the same way I'd come. With the silent salute at the rows of G.I. Joes and Cobra Command Centers, I picked up the pace to a light jog. Rounding the corner, I barely caught sight of something in my path and stopped shy of running into it. On closer inspection, it wasn't just one thing. It was 3. 3 boxed malt shop Barbies, stacked one on top of the other until they reached up to my mid-thigh. These hadn't been here when I first came through, meaning someone had to have put them there. Jeff hadn't read to me as a prankster, but Since I'd locked every other person out of the store myself, he was the only suspect. Hell of a time to get a sense of humor, Jeff, I said to myself, bending to retrieve the toys. I straightened back up in time to see a neon green frisbee whiz an inch past my nose, sailing down the cross aisle where it clattered to a stop on the floor. It was such a surprise, I couldn't stop myself from dropping a much louder than expected "What the fuck?" Jeff's voice came from the front of the store. "Casey, what's up?" Annoyed as hell, I dropped the Barbies into a nearby bin and ran for the front to give him a piece of my mind. He was standing behind one of the tills, a phone cradled between his ear and shoulder, listening intently. "Yes, sir, it's all looking good here. Yes, sir, with your permission, I'd like to get going. This storm doesn't appear to be letting up. I understand. Thank you, sir." With that, he hung up. "Sorry, Casey, I didn't hear what you said back there." He gestured at the phone, then cocked his head quizzically. "Have you been running?" I'd come primed for conflict, and this hadn't been how I expected to find him. My shoulders dropped. Did you stack some Barbies over on 7, then throw a frisbee at me?" The look on his face suggested he hadn't. "Okay, well, if it wasn't you, we might have to check the store because someone did, and it wasn't me." Jeff's eyes narrowed for a second, then some kind of understanding dawned, and he smiled. "Oh, you met Laz." "Laz?" He nodded excitedly. Yeah, Laz is our ghost. He's been here longer than any of us. That's why we call him Laz. It's short for Lazarus." Before he could say more, a barrage of marble-sized hail began to pelt the front windows hard enough we both flinched. "The introductions will have to wait, Case. We should get out of here." And just like that, my world was forcibly expanded to include ghosts. It was the first time, but buddy, let me tell you, it wasn't the last.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.